It's only when it feels I've worn my feet to bone that I recognize my surroundings. It wasn't a particularly long walk, but between all the dying shrubs and flecks of gravel, I regret not taking her heels. It's become easier to dodge the particularly jagged obstacles and unruly succulents now that the sun peeks over the horizon, but the familiar rooftops and half-fenced yards fill me with a much-needed second wind. Ever since I passed a roundabout and spot the occasional car, I've been resisting the urge to try to talk to it. But the endorphin rush of familiar architecture after an hour and a half of unbroken botanical muttering is enough to accept that maybe I am a little crazy, so I might as well clear the air. "So what are you?" I croak, exhausted. I wanted to walk and talk, but halt my marching to quiet things and listen after a few beats pass with no response. The succulents at my feet murmur plenty, but there's nothing from the observer. I try my best to picture them in my mind, but I can't place anything damning. There isn't a voice, or a face. I think back to the times they reached out, like when I drew my first necrotic breath, when I panicked. Saw that tree? Our delicate little moment in the shower. I decide to cherish that, meditate on it, and try again. "I mean you, little buddy," I utter again. My eyes slowly fall from the rooftops they were fixed upon back to the ground, stumbling as I hope to find something to focus on until I'm staring at the shrubbery again. In response, the various shrubs in front of me begin to swell and to grow, which makes me panic when they slip into crisp enough relief for me to realize they're Spanish daggers. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, enough of that!" I exclaim as I circle around the budding plants. "I've stepped on enough of your friends today." After the plants return to their inert dormants, I balance on one foot as I kick the other into my probing hand, thumbing all the spots where even dead spears of those sharp leaf blades manage to cut my foot. Most of them heal over within a minute, but others leave behind scabs and lucent, green goop I have to strain to look at. I hold my foot and balance for another moment, eyes closed, internally pleading for a response from the observer. None come. Let's see. If this is Fairview, then along here should be Desatoya. And Desatoya. With a wide grip, I use one hand to pinch at my temples, a vain attempt to soothe the headache from racking my brain for memories. Some of the memories come in vivid, holistic waves, like my recollection of science class in high school and how these buildings look on my commute to work. Others are tortuously difficult, like street names and how I died. And then there are those that I simply cannot remember no matter how hard I try, like the faces of those cops who held me at gunpoint. Some of these memories I feel like I'm fighting the observer to recover, while others we're both puzzled by the obfuscation of. I'm also upset by how we work collaboratively in that capacity, and yet they still won't respond to my outreach. Is it that they can't? Once I'm lined up with Desatoya, I start throwing my gaze over my shoulder every time I hit a stop sign to see if I recognize things visually, to spare myself recalling another street name. Even when it's dim, I recognize the picket fences and bald yards. Walking on the sidewalk after tripping over plants for so long feels so decadently indulgent that I giggle. Giggle. There's an extra zip between my feet as I practically skip the last stretch home, prematurely dreaming of my bed, my pillows. 5 houses away. 3 houses away. 2 houses away. Oh, there's my neighbor. Home. At last. A very small part of me hates how I recognize the color of my maroon door as that of long, dried blood, but it's washed away by the intensely euphoric glee induced by finally being home. I flinch briefly, having some difficulty recalling where the spare key was hidden, but the artificial rock sticks out like a sore foot to me, so it's not long before I've opened the door and... That's not how I left it. I take a cautious step over the broken lamp, my footfall dampened by the trash mail I typically leave on the counter now crinkling privately into the torn-up carpet. 2 of 3 chairs by my dining room table are knocked over, and the media cabinet my TV was set up on has had its drawers uninstalled, emptied, and then thrown at my coffee table, whose glass top now has a blemishing crack from the impact. I also recognized the drawer from the hallway stand that held up the now broken lamp found its way on the coffee table, too. Equally empty. My house was robbed. For a fraction of a second, my soul burns and chest tightens as I get ready to howl. But a hic from the tremors of my shocked crying stops me for long enough for the fatigue I've felt to compound and suppress the fury. I remember that I came here for my bed. My pillows. Who would take that? I keep going, careful not to slip on the askew, folded rug and enter my bedroom. They sure didn't take the pillows, but each of them was slashed, cut open like game, fresh from a hunt in hopes of hidden valuables. I grabbed the one pillow of mine whose memory foam innards couldn't leak out and make do with that as I collapse into my bed. I nestle my head into my one good pillow, dissociatively acknowledging the laundry and upturned plastic cubbies littering my bedside, before drifting off into hours of dreamless sleep. I feel no better when I wake. Time spent resting is time not spent hydrating, and my already arid body did nothing but shrivel while I slept. I haven't completely pruned up, however, as that goop that's been sealing my wounds now coats my throat and leaks out of the pores of my mouth. It tastes of paper. I shamble out of my bed and into my kitchen. The ransacked drawers stick out like pricks of cacti, but the cupboards still have their cups. In my fridge is a filtered pitcher of water, but when I withdraw it, I lack the self-control to pour it into a cup before I start chugging straight from the pitcher, which turns out to be a bad idea. The water felt great, but thanks to how cold it was, my throat contracted, cracking the dry tissue of my esophagus despite hydrating it at the same time, throwing me into a whooping cough. I guess the goop could only do so much to keep my insides from mummifying. While I recover from the coughing, my hands busy themselves getting room temperature water from the tap. I drink the first cup, and it soothes my soul as each part of my body accepts and retains it. I press the cold pitcher into my right side against where my injuries were, and while it does sting, the cool sensation is novel enough to make me press harder. I'm on my third glass before I hear someone knock at my door. I anxiously gulp the water I've been savoring in my mouth before setting the glass down and sprinting to my bedroom, shedding my lab coat on the way. Besides all the various feathers and strips of cloth my room is now littered with, I'm able to throw on a few pieces of my clothing. After slipping into it, I sprint to the door, take a second to set aside my mounting dread, and open it just enough to see who knocked. It's a Girl Scout. Oh, thank God, I exasperatedly bleat to myself. I was afraid she was a cop or the bastards who wrecked my house coming for a second pass, but it was... it's just a Girl Scout. Hi there. My name is Amelia, and I'm with Troop 257. Would you like to support young women and entrepreneurs like myself? Her squeaky little voice cuts through the din of my anxiety with such a rehearsed clarity that I'm taken aback. She waddles for a bit as she waits for a response, tugging on the wagon to bring it into view. Atop it is a grand spread of cookies and confectionery, obscured slightly by the overgrown weeds in the soil bed drooping over them. You know, I'd love to, but are you here to sell cookies? I ask. Yes, I am, she responds with a radiant flare. Do you have a favorite, or would you like to instead hear about our latest flavors? That's the thing, I take a sharp inhale to find a way to phrase this that won't break her heart. I try to only eat organic stuff. She looks down at her pristine shoes and rummages through her soul to find a solution to my problem. It takes her a bit, but the conclusion she comes to is so potent and meaningful that her eyes open with a blazing conviction. She digs through her wagon for a particular box and makes a stand, resolutely declaring, "We have gluten-free options." The box she's holding has inverted colors, and is for their gluten-free blueberry muffin cookie. The text below the enlarged photo of the cookie reads in all caps as, "Imitation Blueberry." While the thought of whatever imitation blueberry is makes me gag, something about the box is incredibly alluring, and I find myself genuinely questioning whether I'd eat it or not. I mean, gun to my head, well, from personal experience, I'd tell some weeds to grow around some wheels while I book it, but those aren't the same, I instinctually reply before just as quickly quieting myself to a whisper. I can my rant to protect her tiny little ears and instead meekly say, "No thank you." While her posture remains relatively the same, her chest is no longer puffed with the same brazen bravado as she first started with, and I can tell by the way she slowly deflates that she's upset that wasn't a suitable solution. That doesn't end the conversation, though, as she picks up where her script left off and adds, "In that case, would you like to instead directly donate to the Girl Scouts of the USA? Her patience and sweetness alone make me want to donate, but I realize my ransacked house was picked clean. There's certainly no chance I have cash I can donate with." "Do you take card?" I ask before realizing how stupid that sounds. "Actually, yes," she answers without missing a beat. In a quick motion, she withdraws a phone and attaches a card reader module to it. Is that your phone?" "Uh-huh," she confirms, unblinking as she opens the financial app they facilitate transactions through. Something about how dejected her response was in contrast with her typically bubbly contributions makes me realize how much of a boomer I sound like. When she gets her phone set up, I revisit what about the cookies were so alluring. I fucking hate synthetic stuff, and yet I find my mouth watering at even just a picture of the cookie. No, the phrase imitation blueberry. That's gross, and I hate it. Oh, but it sounds really good right now. "So how much would you like to donate?" she asserts with a cute tilt of her head. "Actually," I falter. Something inside of me wants those damn cookies, and I'm powerless to fight it. I changed my mind about the cookies." Oh, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm saying this. "And I'd love to support the Girl Scouts." "What the fuck am I doing? I don't have my wallet." "You said you're an entrepreneur, right?" "Me and all the other girls in 257. She responds, sneaking in the most precious curtsy I've ever seen. Fine. Awesome. Hold tight real quick. I close the door and send a hand through my messy, messy hair. What did people do in the before times? Barter? What do I have? I hardly recognize this place now. My vision has been progressively narrowing, but now it feels like I have blinders on, and it's become much more difficult to move my body now than it was a moment ago. I stumble my back into the wall and slide down to sit. I shoot my head up as I think of a plan, but up there, it's basically white noise. Then, I see it. The bottle of wine my boss gave me on my 21st birthday. It still has the ribbon on it. Oh, I can't be fucking serious. "Hey there," I pipe when I open the door back up, hiding my poor footing by only poking my head out from behind it. I notice a dark blue SUV idling in front of my house that wasn't there before, and point to it. "That's your mom, right?" She nods quietly as she gauges my intent. "Does she drink wine?" "What?" "Yeah, just wondering. Does she drink wine?" Yeah, she responds with a confused mumble. "Does she enjoy drinking nice wine?" I probe, rolling my head a little bit to try not to sound like as much of a creep as I'm being. Something about how I moved my head gives me a hit of nausea, and I've planted a hand on my forehead to still my tremors while she answers with a slow, reluctant, I don't know. "Well, look, I don't have money, but I have really nice wine. It probably costs more than your entire wagon, but I'll cut you a nice deal," I tell her. Am I really bartering with a fourth grader? With wine? My mom told me not to take drugs from strangers. Which is good. You shouldn't do that. But maybe in this scenario, you should. I'm gonna go. Wait! Due to dubiously malevolent chaotic forces beyond my control, I need a few boxes of your cookies. Due to completely different, evil, chaotic forces, I don't have any money to pay you with. I'm doing my best to meet you halfway. You're scaring me, she shouts as she tugs on her wagon. The cookie boxes balanced atop, struggling to maintain formation. Don't run away. I'm not trying to hurt you, I coaxingly reassure her. But, of course, that's exactly what someone who would try to hurt her would say. She's in tears by the time the weeds that gummed up the axles of her wagon give to an exasperated tug that Amelia puts her back into before sprinting to the SUV. I close the door. I take a deep breath and pace a little bit before there's a much more furious rap of knuckles rolling against my door. I open it up again. "Are you the woman who tried to give my daughter alcohol?" a lady with a high bun and curly flyaways asks, her phone recording video in her other hand. Considering I haven't put down the wine bottle, I'm in no position to lie. "Yes, it was a moment of weakness. I apologize. I just really wanted those cookies." "So you were going to yell at and haggle down a minor with alcohol?" she justly riposts with maternal rage. I am overcome with guilt as the girl picks up the boxes that fell while her mother records me. "In all fairness, the bottle was more for you than it was for your daughter." "Unbelievable!" she sputtered with an indignant shock. "I'm calling the police." Don't!" "Why shouldn't I?" Because I've had a long day and I came back home to this." I stop hiding behind the door and adjust it for her to see. She loses her steely resolve and appears much more sympathetic. "Someone broke in and..." I'm out of words, but in doing so, she figures out the rest of the story. Her hand holding her phone lowers, and she spends a moment in my eyes, now privy to my pain. She blinks hard and flicks her eyes down to stop the recording on her phone, before switching which hand she's holding it with. "Well, I'm not going to call the police on you, but we've got to..." "I have already," I find my mouth saying. Where'd the observer learn to do that? I open my mouth to correct the mistake, but can't vocalize anything. "Did they investigate?" she asks. I haggle with the observer's obstructive editorializing and eventually say, "Not enough." "I know this isn't much," the lady starts, "but I'm an investigative reporter. If the police give up on you, I won't." She shoots a hand into her purse and withdraws a business card. I take it wordlessly. I notice she's still looking at me. When we make eye contact again, she lowers her head and endearingly asks, "Are you safe?" "I'll be fine. Thank you." Once her daughter finishes scratching her eyes and collecting the cookie boxes, she waves goodbye and walks to her car. Amelia puts her wagon in the trunk. I guess I spooked her for the day. Another wave of nausea hits and I lose my footing. My chin hurts as the pattern of the weathered brick of my walkway presses itself into my face. My stomach sours and I feel a pressure behind my throat. My vision is almost completely gone now. I think the weeds are reaching out to me. I hear a few snaps of roots and the rustling of soil. Eventually, I make out a box of Girl Scout cookies emerging from the flower bed, wrapped in fresh, purple shoots of garden weeds. The weeds unfurl like claws as they delicately ferry the box to my decaying corpse. I meekly reach out to it and fumble with the box by touch until the cookies spill out right in front of my mouth. I don't have the strength to eat them, but the weeds do. Covered in dirt and spider thread fibers, the longest shoot sends itself into the center of a cookie and flings it into my mouth when I open. I bite down and taste chocolate, and then another few bites reveal coconut. Samoas. As soon as I swallow, I feel much more rested than sleep could ever make me. My vision is back, crisp and bright. I can make out all the little strips of coconut glazed on the upward-facing cookies, and the texturing of the sheet the chocolate bottoms were poured onto. The yellowing shafts of the dead weeds, and the few greenish-red ones that saved my life. I've never been so grateful for weeds. Their functions also come in sharper relief. They aren't as loud and obnoxious as the weeds out there, as their roots aren't networked. They aren't nearly as stressed, and seem to be living a simple, easy life, foiling all of my gardening attempts. "Fuck you guys," I manage to say before another shaft works a cookie into my mouth. This cookie makes my body feel like mine again. And thank you.